So how can you reverse pre-diabetes? You totally can, and it's not as hard as you think, but there's a number of things that you need to do. So I would say the first thing that I would do is, there's a saying, or the first thing that I did do, there's a saying that what gets measured gets managed. So if you don't measure something, you can't manage it. I've struggled with, I mastered my alcohol addiction, and one of the biggest tools that helped me get past alcohol is because I'm someone who really cares about my health. I started wearing a Whoop over the last 5 years, and it took a few years for me to get these really bad recovery signals from my Whoop. I got a steep driveway, and that was my wife coming home, and it's one way, and so it's always a challenge, like who's gonna pull out of the way, and you always want to yield to the uphill person. Okay. So I quit drinking in a lot, there's a lot to that, but one of the best tools that helped me was wearing a Whoop, the Whoop fitness tracker, and seeing the really bad recoveries that I would have every time after I drank. Like every single time. It was like, here I'm doing all these things to try to increase my recovery and make my wellness better, and then I would drink and just tank my recovery every time. So number one is to measure. And so how do you measure? Well, you can get a little pricker, and I've had a pricker for years. But finally, and I tried to get my doctor to prescribe me a continuous glucose monitor, and they just wouldn't. Like, they won't give you a continuous glucose monitor until you're already so fucking sick, excuse my language, that, it's almost too late. So finally, I was looking, and I finally got, it's still a lot of money for most people, but for roughly $100 a month, 80, 90 bucks a month, I can get 2 Dexcom Stello glucose monitors. So I'm on my second run with those, and those have been game changers. I was just not wanting to spend the money, but now I finally just realized, like, how much you spend on health insurance and stuff. If you simply manage your glucose, it's almost the single, I would say it's, if not the top, it is one of the top health management things you can do is managing your glucose, because everything, all the diseases cascade off of your glucose getting off. It's something I do really want to say here too, is that, pre-diabetes is not only a fat person's disease. You can have it when you're skinny like me, and we just have different symptoms. What do I want to say? I want to say that, like, it doesn't matter how you look. You can, in this carb, sugar-soaked world, you can just totally destroy yourself easily, even if you're skinny. Well, it doesn't matter what you look like on the outside. There is a specific set of problems that goes along with being overweight, but sugar will take you out no matter what your weight. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so back on track. How do we reverse pre-diabetes? And then really I want to focus on those easy things you can do. So the easiest thing that you can do, this may sound really silly, but the single most important simple thing that you can do the most effective thing you can do to reverse pre-diabetes, maybe even diabetes, I don't know. I'm not medically qualified to answer that question, but I know you can do it with pre-diabetes because that's my struggle, and I can give you specific recommendations from what's worked for me. Is to do squats. You do squats after you eat. Now, you can do squats before you eat too, but it's most effective after you eat. And why squats? So the muscles will literally just soak up the glucose, and they'll soak up the glucose in the cells in the muscles, and they'll use them. They'll use them as energy. So when you do squats, you're engaging the largest muscles in your body, and you're sucking up the most glucose. So it's pretty simple. Now, you don't have to do squats. You can just go for a hike if you're like, I don't want to do squats, or my knees hurt, or whatever. You can go for a walk outside. Sometimes I'll just like raise my legs or walking in place. Anything that you can do. Now, again, I would say getting a glucose monitor is going to be key. I buy mine from ADW. It's a Florida company online. And like I said, it cost me $80-$90 for a month supply of glucose monitor. That's 2 15-day glucose monitors. I've seen there's subscriptions out there that are, $500 a month or $400 a month, and have all these fancy trackers and stuff. You don't need any of that. All you need to do is start measuring, just start noticing what's spiking you and adjust your behavior. No, that just noticing what's spiking you and when it's spiking you in real time changes everything. It totally changes everything. So let's see. So we got squats, and we got the glucose being sucked up by the muscles. You want to suck up the largest muscles. You want to suck up glucose from the largest muscles in your system. All right, now let's move on to some other stuff. So exercise is number one, because you need to get that glucose into the muscles and out of the bloodstream. So that's your prime goal, is to get that muscle into the muscle, get that glucose into the muscles. So you can do squats, you could do you can do push-ups, you can do pull-ups, you can do anything that engages large muscle groups. Is going to be very effective. I've been a big cardio guy most of my life, and a light strength training and stretching person, and that's very helpful. But the reality is that if you do muscle building, if you do weight training, that's going to be your most effective glucose management tool. Walking and biking and hiking and cardio, those are all incredible things, and they're really going to help you. But I'm trying to focus on the highest impact stuff. So if you can only do one thing, do squats after a meal. If you can only purchase one thing, get a continuous glucose monitor. Even if you just get a continuous glucose monitor and you do it for a little while and just start to notice what's happening. Okay, so then the third one, I guess I would say, so we've got squats, we've got a continuous glucose monitor, and then the third one, I'm gonna say the most impactful thing is that you don't ever eat refined carbs or refined sugar. Well, first, you don't ever eat it alone. There's a lot of people that will recommend, like the glucose goddess lady, she recommends putting clothes on your carbs. So eating fiber, fat, and protein. And that's really good. But what I would say, fat and protein are actually secondary, and really the most important thing to focus on is fiber. There's a lot of, in America especially, and in the Western world, there's just not enough fiber. And if you build your fiber intake, it's gonna have so many metabolic benefits. It's insane how many metabolic benefits it has. I'll do another video where I actually have an outline and I have more time, and I can read through my outline of all of the specific benefits of each various aspect. But I can't do that while I'm driving, and this is what I had time to make this morning. So don't ever eat refined grains alone. And then also, you just got to be careful of the refined grains and the sugar. Now, obviously we know that, right? Everybody's got pre-diabetes. knows that you got to stay away from the white flour and pastas and breads and cakes and cookies and pies and all those things that we love. Candies, whatever. I don't really like. Candy's not my thing, but the pies and the cakes, just love them. So you got to do that stuff after fiber. So that would be, I guess, the fourth really most effective thing is to focus every meal. You get as much fiber as you can in first. That's the bottom line. So if you've got coleslaw, you eat coleslaw before you have, French fries or whatever. God, there's so much here. There's so many things. I'm just trying to focus on the most impactful stuff. Okay, here's another most impactful thing. Start working on your eating window. Your intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting, is a lot of people are into it these days, and because it has so many metabolic benefits. One of the best things, so literally the best way that you can intermittent fast is if you front load your food in the beginning part of the day and then try to taper off towards the end of the day. So if you're gonna eat carbs, so if you're gonna eat a lot of carbs, those carbs need to be timed to your most active part of the day. So if you go to the gym, it's before you go to the gym. So if you really want to have a cake, well, you have your cake before you go do your workout. You don't get to have cake at night before you go to bed. That's the worst. So that's basically the idea. The idea is you're going to front load with plenty of calories in the beginning part of the day and then start tapering off. And then if you can stop eating by 3, that's great. If you tend to be high stress like I tend to be, then you don't want to do too short of too long of fasts, because you'll bump your cortisol. Now here's another critical thing. When your cortisol is bumped, that's going to dump glucose into your bloodstream. It's going to raise your blood sugar a lot, and you got to watch that. So watching your stress levels is the next big thing. So let's talk about that. The next big hack is your stress levels. So if you tend to be high stress, then having a low stress exercise. So belly breathing is one that I do quite regularly. And then for my particular case, the belly breathing actually helps with my hiatal hernia and my GERD. All right, let's see what else are like really simple hacks. I mean, these are all simple. A lot of them are not necessarily easy. Like, I struggle so much by ending my eating earlier in the day. It's so challenging for me. I want to have a nice dinner with my family, but it's not wise. And then there's the peer pressure too. Like, you got friends, all of your sugar, carb, alcohol, caffeine addicted friends are gonna push you to do. They're gonna give all these subtle cues and pushes, and literally sometimes push you to do stuff that is not in your body's best interest. All right, let's see, what else are the simplest, most effective things you can do? So repeating a little bit, squats after meals. So if you do some sort of squats or walk, just engage your leg muscles. Engage the biggest muscles on your body. If you do some sort of exercise and then you eat for about 15 to 60 minutes afterwards, your cells are more primed to uptake the glucose. But it's always going to be best if you do it after the meal. It's just I'm sorry, but if you're struggling with pre-diabetes or even diabetes, like, you got to get a continuous glucose monitor. Fight your doctor, fight them. I mean, I lost with my doctor, and I just, okay, out of pocket, this is what I'm gonna have to do. And I resisted that for years, for 3 or 4 years. I was trying to get a continuous glucose monitor, couldn't get it. They're like, you're not sick enough. Oh, thanks. Right, I wanna be more sick before I can actually get what I need. Thank you. That's healthcare. Like, that's why they call it sick care, not healthcare. That's why they should call it sick care, not healthcare. Anyways, let's see. So you got to get a continuous glucose monitor. And I found that the cheapest one I could get was through ADW, the Dexcom Stello. And they say all this stuff like, it's not designed for diabetics, and it's just a tool. It is. So I think it's sufficient for most people. Sufficient for me, that's for sure. And then again, like, don't eat fiber first. Eat fiber first. And as much fiber as you can at the beginning of the meal. Like, that's the key. So the way I like to also, another way to think about it is fiber, then protein, then healthy fats, then complex carbs, and then if you've got to have some simple carbs, then do that afterwards. But always do those other things first. And then the other thing is don't eat yourself into a coma. Like, you got to get up and move. So that's so hard. Like, I was just, for years, all I did was eat myself into a coma. And now I'm pre-diabetic. Skinny guy who's pre-diabetic. Like, what? You're not supposed to be pre-diabetic. Someone said to me the other day, I was like, yeah, I'm pre-diabetic. They're like, what? You don't look pre-diabetic. You look healthy. Like, yeah, I do. But it doesn't matter. Like, if you do all the wrong things with your diet, it doesn't matter what you look like. You're still going to get it. All right. Okay, where was I? We were talking about the food and the timing and the fiber. And the other thing, again, I may be repeating myself, but it's worth repeating. Use your carbs inside of your exercise time. So if you're really like, I want to eat some carbs, man, I want to eat some sugar, like, that should be before your workout. Before your workout is when you have your carbs and your sugar, not even after. I would say, like, maybe immediately after, if you've done a really big workout and you're feeling like a really drop in your glucose. If you have the glucose monitor, you'll see like, oh, my glucose is really low, and then you can have some carbs or some sugar. All right, so, and then stress. So then stress spikes your glucose more than the food. So that cortisol shot is going to release all of that glucose into your bloodstream. So you gotta, if you're high stress, you gotta have some tools. So let's do a few stress tools. Belly breathing. That's just, you can put your hands on your belly. Probably going to take 30 to 60 seconds for you to sort of drop the nervous system down a little bit. And it's really important when you're dealing with stress to know. So I've been wearing the Whoop for 5 years, and it has the stress monitor now. And when you're exercising, that's a high stress activity. So stress, that's not bad, right? Stress outside of exercise, that's not necessarily bad either. It just has to be in doses that are managed well. So I would say the most effective stress reduction tool that's like quick would be the belly breathing. I suppose if it's really bad, you can do the box breathing, which is like 4 inhales, hold for 4, 4 count, exhale, hold out for 4. And then you can increase that number. Sometimes if I'm really stressed out, I'll do 5, 5, 5, 5, and then 6, 6, 6, 6, and I'll keep going up into as much as I can. That really helps a lot. Another thing I think is critical is, so this is something I just realized this morning, is that let's talk about caffeine. So if you're crave caffeine like all the time, your metabolism's probably off. And you're probably running on cortisol, not on your mitochondrial effectiveness. Now again, this is a super simple one, but it's super hard. So in the morning, it's going to be most effective for you to get up and exercise and get the, you clear and open the pathways for the mitochondria to do its thing rather than go straight for the caffeine. Now I'm talking theoretically now because I'm about, 60-40. Reach to caffeine first, 40 I'll go to exercise, breath work, yoga, meditation. I'll do those things about 40% of the time. But trust me, if you start to address this more from a metabolic energy place, rather than like, oh, how can you live without caffeine? It's literally a drug that we're all addicted to because we've lost our internal energy. Kids don't need caffeine. So we don't either, except that we have sort of depleted our energy stores and we don't know how to build them back up. So building back up those energy stores after you've been depleting them so long with this caffeine cortisol system, it takes a while. I remember the last time I did it, it took me about a month before I got my energy back on track. But then I tell you, my energy was so clean. It was so steady. Now I'm tamped down to decaf coffee, 2 cups of decaf coffee in the morning. I was on 2 cups of full strong coffee. And then I remember there was a while in my life when I was on 4 cups of full strong coffee, like right in the morning. And that was just my system totally depleted and me just sort of chemically trying to keep it going. And that it's going to work for a little while, but it's going to burn you out. And you're going to either fry something. You're going to fry your nervous system. You're going to fry your glucose system. So you've got to address caffeine. And I know nobody wants to hear this. You're probably going to click off. I've got what I'm talking about. Just be courageous enough to see the totality of who you are, and that's part of the puzzle. It's totally part of the puzzle, and nobody wants to see it. The other day I was in a gathering and I brought up my caffeine, like, oh yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with caffeine. And like literally everybody, it was like the C part of it, they all walked away because they couldn't handle it. No one could. I'm sure you're struggling with this too. Unless you're not. There are people that don't use caffeine out there, but most of us are. It's the most highly addicted substance on planet Earth. It's like a roller coaster. You caffeine up and then you alcohol down, or you caffeine up and you carb down, and it just needs to be talked about. We got to talk about the negative effects of the stimulants that we take to mask how our systems are out of whack. All right, so address the stimulants. The stimulant addiction is a sign of metabolic dysfunction. So the next thing is that it is kind of like a meta principle, and that meta principle is listening. And so you've got, if you really want to be well, you have to listen to your body. And so much of our culture tells us to mask what our body says. It's like, as a man, like, oh, you gotta express through it, man. Yeah. There is a place for that, but in the wellness routine and your long-term longevity, it doesn't work. Your body's constantly giving you signals. So, for example, weightlifting, bodybuilding is going to be not bodybuilding specifically. I guess bodybuilding is an okay way to describe it. Words are important. So if you're building your body and you're creating muscles that suck up glucose, well, that's a good thing to do. To build your body so that it only it just looks a particular way. I don't know. I guess it's good on some level, but doesn't seem that great. Maybe it'll help you whatever. So if you're a bodybuilder, no disrespect, I just think if you're interested in wellness, it's about function, not appearance. You know, like the design element. Form follows function. So if your muscles are big, it's because you need big muscles for whatever function you're doing. All right. So listening to your body is critical. So there's this crazy dance you got to do. You got to be like, at the same time, you got to be unwilling to yield to this. It's almost like you have a death. We do. We all have this sort of death. That death is always like right here. And then you have life that's right here. And so that death is kind of pulling you to make decisions towards death, and the life is pulling you to make decisions towards life. So you always got to like move towards life. And sometimes that looks like resisting what the body's asking you to do. Like that's what any recovery is you got to resist. The body's now accustomed to this death cycle, so you got to resist it. So it's the same thing when you're healing yourself from glucose. You have to resist that pull towards the death cycle, which is overfeeding the body. And it's literally like making space for the next generation. You're like, oh, there's too much food, so we'll just kill off this individual so that the kids can live, because we do live in a finite world. I'm where I need to be, so I need to wrap this one up. All right. So you got to listen. You got to find that balance between listening and pushing. Listening and pushing. It's not, everybody wants, I'm sorry, like as human beings, we want these simple answers. So I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. But when it comes to this one, when it comes to listen versus challenge, like nurture versus challenge, the simple answer is they're both wrong and they're both right. So it's not a simple answer. The simplest answer I can give is listen and find a middle path. That middle path is like build your muscles, push through the challenge, but if a pain arises, that pain, there's a place that's a mindful place in the middle where you're pushing through a resistance, a stagnation. And then there's another place where if you're pushing too hard, you're pushing into injury. You're into self-harm. So you'll see that people are on one side or the other. They're like, you gotta just push through it, man. Or they're like, you just need to like do more restorative yoga and just nurture the self, more self-care. And neither one, they're both right and they're both wrong. So it's a middle path. The easy answer is it's like walking on a tightrope, and you're constantly balancing back and forth. Listen, challenge. Listen, challenge. So that's the simplest way I can describe it. You don't be seduced by one or the other, because they're both wrong and they're both right in their limited way. Okay, I hope that's been helpful. Please leave questions. I'd like to do an expanded video of this, but if nobody watches or cares, then I'm not going to bother. But if you do care and you want more information, if you leave a comment and tell me the direction that you'd like more information, then I will do that. Okay. Peace, power, joy, universal love.